Namaskar. Described by a renowned film director as India's first literary pop star, his unique combination of crackling storytelling, dharmic symbolism, and profound philosophies have made him a phenomenon. His 5 books till date have 4 million copies in print, with gross retail sales of 1,200 million rupees. His books have been translated into 19 Indian and international languages. A recipient of Raymond Cross Award, then Oscar Literature Award, Society Young Achievers Award for Literature, Man of the Year by Radio City, Communicator of the Year, Pride of India Award. He's also been listed among 100 most influential celebrities in India by Forbes magazine. He figures in GQ50 most influential young Indians and was selected as an Eisenhower Fellow. A graduate of IIM Calcutta who has worked for 14 years in the financial services sector before turning to full-time writing, he believes that you need to read at least 100 pages to be able to write just one page convincingly. Indic Book Club's guest for this Independence Day special Indic Chat is none other than immortal India's prodigal Amish. Namaste Amish ji, Indic Chat में आपका स्वागत है.
Thank you so much for having me. बहुत शुक्रिया.
आपकी लेटेस्ट बेस्ट सेलर सीता
कोई बहुत अच्छा गाना बजा रहा है, मुझे सुनाई दे रहा है.
संगीतमय हो रहे हैं हम. आपकी लेटेस्ट बेस्ट सेलर सीता वॉरियर ऑफ मिथिला से इंस्पिरेशन लेते हुए भारत की स्वतंत्रता के 70 वर्ष के उपलक्ष्य में हमने जो ये इंडिक चार्ट रखा है, आज हमारे साथ है उसमें भारत के विभिन्न कोनों से संपर्क रखने वाली भारत की बेटियां. I'm delighted to welcome these wonderful women whose voice we have heard through their videos, podcasts, articles, books, tweets, and other media. And today we are going to see and hear them in person thanks to technology. I have with me Ms. Shefali Vaidya, journalist, blogger, and writer. Ms. Sai Swarupa Iyer, the author of Abhaya and Avishi. Ms. Anjali George, a cultural enthusiast who worships and cherishes the great civilization of Bharat. Welcome everyone. Since we have just an hour with us, we should begin without further ado, just keeping it bilingual for everyone's convenience. I'd request Shefali to kickstart this conversation.
Well, thank you, Dimple, and thank you, Amish, for giving me this chance. My question is, the name Bharat of India comes from the Sanskrit root Ha, which means Prakash, which means light. Right. So the country that gives the light of wisdom to the world is what Bharat was. So when your Vishwamitra says, let's make India great again, are you talking about the journey of today's India to that Bharat, the original meaning of the Bharat?
You know, the kind of direction our country has taken post 1991, we made unfortunate economic decisions pre 1991, but post 1991 economically we've been going in the right direction broadly, and we have moved maybe anywhere between 100 to 200 million people out of poverty. Power in the modern day is actually built on economic power. A few centuries ago, it was built on military power. I'm not saying military power is not important, but today, the way the Turks just conquered so much of the world from Central Asia, destroyed so much of India, of China, of the Middle East, that is impossible to do today. Most countries rise because of their economic strength. They need other sources of strength as well. So India is actually, in my mind, I'm an India optimist. Okay, it's unless we completely mess up, there is no way that we will not be one of the greatest powers in the world. In a few years, at max a few decades, we will be among the top powers in the world. The question that comes to mind is, what kind of power will we be? And that is something that we Indians should sit and ponder about. And on that, there's a lot that we can learn from our ancestors. The world of ancient India was devoted to knowledge, devoted to Saraswati Ma, devoted to improving ourselves in every space. We were open to learn knowledge from everyone. We never had the attitude that I know everything, so I'm not gonna, open my mind and learn from someone else. Someone from abroad could come and teach us. Anyone could come and teach us. We would be willing to share our knowledge with others, be willing to learn from others. That is an attitude. If you read this book by Sanjeev Sanyal called The Indian Renaissance, one of his first book, I I think our decline began perhaps because we lost that spirit, you know, a few centuries ago. We lost that attitude of just learning from everyone, and not getting into a closed-minded approach. And that is something that I think we should try and foster once again. That was our ancient culture. We need to revive it once again. This love of knowledge from anyone. It doesn't matter where it comes from. If it's something worth learning, learn it.
Okay. So Amish ji, next is my question. So
Yeah.
what is your view on humanizing gods and telling their tales in connection with the history? So as in your stories, your works.
In the Indian way, there are various approaches to the divine, to the God. One is the Nirgun Nirakar concept, the formless concept of God, which in ancient times was called Brahman.
Yeah.
No, but Vaishnavites would also name him Lord Shiva. Vaishnavas would call Lord Shiva, Lord Vishnu. The names can be different, but the point was the same. That a Nirgun Nirakar, formless God, who obviously you can't even assign a gender to that.
Yeah.
Then there's the second concept of God, where God has taken an akar, a form, to come closer to us. There's a third concept of God called the avatar concept, where God takes birth as someone in this Mayavi world, does his or her karma, and then goes back up. And there's a fourth concept of God, where a human being discovers the God within. Okay.
Mm.
And that belief is in some way linked to the first concept, to the Brahman concept, because it is believed that Brahman exists in all of us, not just human beings, but in everything, which is why instinctively most Indians respect the environment as well, because we see God in the environment too, in the trees, in the rivers, we see God in everything. I find this fourth concept extremely empowering, because what it means is that our problems are in our hands. It's up to us. If we want to rise and discover the power that we have within and discover it with humility, then who can stop us from solving our own problems? So I believe the gods that we worship were our ancestors. I believe Lord Ram, Lord Krishna, Lord Shiva. I believe their blood, Sati Ma, Parvati Ma. I believe their blood runs in our veins, and I find that concept empowering, because we have to make ourselves capable of that blood. If their blood runs in our veins, we have to raise our character and thinking to a level where we are capable of where we are worthy, of that. But at the same time, can I prove that they existed, that they were our ancestors? No, I can't. But I'm not forcing my point of view on anyone else. If someone else doesn't want to believe it, don't believe it. I believe it. I believe they existed. I believe they are our ancestors.
Yeah.
And Amish ji, about the world creation, the thought process behind the world creation that went behind writing all your books. So will Immortal India throw any light on the thought process?
It does.
The writer's questions.
Yeah. Sorry, because Immortal India has various articles. It's my first non-fiction book, so it has various articles and thoughts on the land that I love, on India and social issues and historical issues, etc. of our land. But I also speak on some personal things. So yes, I also speak of why I write, for example, how the stories come to me. The ending of the Shiva trilogy. There are many people who had a lot of philosophical questions about the ending of the Shiva trilogy. So I explain my thoughts on that as well. Yes, all that is there in the book too. Hope you like it.
Read.
Yeah, it'll release on August 28th. So
Let's wait.
Yes,
yeah,
waiting for it.
But pre-booking is open.
Yeah.
Never lose an opportunity to market.
I think you have said you should own your book one.
Absolutely.
I have a question which is in accordance with your latest book. You have said in a previous interview that you were once an atheist, you were a rebel, and now you call yourself a Shiv Bhakt. And just as you have said, you believe that the blood of the gods runs into us. So I want to know, how did that spiritual journey come about? Is your journey as a writer influence your spiritual journey? Or did your journey as a spiritual seeker, influence your writing?
It actually went hand in hand, honestly. So it never happens the way it is in the movies. Na? Ki there's a bright flash of light and you suddenly discover that's in the movies. That doesn't really, in real life, it, at least to me, it kind of happens slowly. And my books and my rediscovery of faith, I must clarify, it's a rediscovery of faith, because when I was young, I was deeply religious. I grew up in a very religious family. I turned into an atheist when I was a teenager. I was a teenager for 10, 12 years. And writing my first book kind of slowly brought me back to faith.
I think we should stop.
And, hello?
Please carry on.
Yeah, okay. And writing my my first book slowly brought me back to faith, and that's how it actually it kind of worked for me. I should also clarify that in the traditional Indian way, in the ancient Indian way, there's nothing wrong with being an atheist. Many of our our major ancient schools of philosophy were 9 in number. And some of them were atheists. The Charvaks were atheists. They didn't believe in God. They didn't believe in the Vedas either. The Sankhyas and the Mimamsas didn't believe in a creator God. So in the modern sense, they could be called atheists. But there was no violent attacks, on people who were atheists. In India, we always had that freedom for different points of view. We would have debate, of course. We would have Shastrat, but there was never a concept that your view is wrong and you'll go to hell for not believing that. Those concepts didn't exist in ancient India. So I must clarify: it's more important that you do good karma, and atheism or theism is your personal choice, your own personal journey in this life.
Amish ji, I have a question about Lord Shiva only. See, he is Ghora, and he is called Shiva, who does tapasya, and then Kala, who destroys everything. How do we explain this contradiction?
One of the books in my article, I'd written this as a part of a cover story piece in the Week magazine, and it's there in this book as well. Is an article saying Lord Shiva, the god of contradiction. And the point I make is actually that's what I know. Disrespect to any other god, and I respect all gods, but I'm primarily a Shaivite. So it is the part of him that makes him most attractive, his contradictions, because he is in a sense the Vairagi god. He is detached from everything, but he's also the perfect householder god. He's a very devoted husband, good father to his children. He's not someone who dresses sharply, if you know what I mean. He'll wear Shamshan Ghat ka bhasm. He'll wear a tiger skin skirt. Doesn't matter. But at the same time, he was also, when he was getting married, first time he'd gone in just in that normal thing. Then then he went as in his Sundar form, and it was believed he was one of the most beautiful creations ever. He doesn't differentiate between the highborn and the lowborns. वो देव को भी आशीर्वाद दे देंगे, असुर को भी आशीर्वाद दे देंगे, उनको कुछ फर्क नहीं पड़ता है. He is शिव जी की बारात में anyone can join, doesn't differentiate at all. But at the same time, he's the god of the arts, of music, of dance. He's a god of the elites and a god of the commoners, because the elites love him because of his arts, and the commoners love him because he doesn't differentiate. उनको कुछ फर्क नहीं पड़ता, आप जो भी background के हो. If you've done your karma, if you've done your prayer, he'll bless you. And these contradictions, I think, make him attractive, actually, because he attracts us through various different routes, and then he balances us. So someone who's an elitist will get attracted to Lord Shiva through the music and the dance. And then from Lord Shiva will learn that actually you should respect the commoners too. Correct? Someone who's a commoner excuse me, will get attracted to Lord Shiva, because he himself behaves like a commoner. But then he learned from Lord Shiva the aspects that actually you must learn knowledge as well, because Lord Shiva is the god of the Vedas too. He's the source of the Vedas. So his contradictions actually make him attractive, and they balance us. And what we need, divinity is in balance, and I think that's the role that Lord Shiva plays. At least that's a role that he plays in my life.
Wonderful. I have a question. Now we talked about Lord Shiva. I have a question about Bhagwan Ram. So it's very clear to anybody who reads the Ramayana that Ram is not projected or depicted as a superman or a superhuman. He is a human being with normal human qualities. And what is the exact purpose, or what is the message that the author wanted to convey to the society by composing it? Because what I basically want to arrive at or ask you is, what is it that we can extract as a learning from the Ramayana without projecting the current day sensibilities or the modern sensibilities onto it? Especially coming from the perspective that, we have had these recent tendencies where people have said Lord Rama is a misogynist, Sita was a repressed woman and all. So I just wanted your take on it. Why do you think the Ramayana was composed, and what is the message that we should be taking from it?
There is an article that I've written on this in the book as well, on saying why I respect Lord Ram, and I end that article saying, I say it with pride, Jai Shri Ram.
Jai Shri
Jai Shri Ram. The this article was triggered by an experience I'd had at a lit fest. I normally just go for a lit fest for my event. Normally, I'm just there for a day and I just finish. I don't normally hang around too much. And I'd gone for this lit fest and I was speaking on mythology on stage, and there were two other people sharing the stage with me. And once the event was over, someone came, and spoke to me later and started criticizing Lord Ram. And said that, I know that you respect women, so why are you referring to Lord Ram as Lord? Why didn't you just say Ram? So I said, I respect him, I'll call him Lord Ram. And then that person went on to criticize Lord Ram. And look, in Vedic Sanskrit, there's no translation for the English word blasphemy. So we are not just allowed, but we are encouraged to ask questions. But one of the things I've always held, that especially when you're speaking about God, शब्दों की मर्यादा होनी चाहिए. There are some words you don't use, right? You're absolutely free to question. In fact, it's your duty to question. But there are some words you don't use. So actually, the kind of words that were being used actually upset me, a great deal. And I'd written an article at that point, which is there in the book, that the approach in the traditional Indian way is that when we look at our gods, we are supposed to learn from them. We're supposed to learn from various archetypes that they embody. And Lord Ram embodies the archetype of Maryada Purushottam. Correct? Maryada Purushottam, the correct translation of it is the ideal follower of laws. It's often erroneously translated as perfect man, but that is the translation of Purushottam. Maryada Purushottam means the ideal follower of laws. So Lord Ram exemplifies the way of life of an ideal follower of laws. So what do we learn from such an archetype? An ideal follower of laws normally is a wonderful leader. The society that such a leader leads will be very well run, will be very fair, very just, will be Ram Rajya. But normally the family of an ideal follower of laws will have a lot of personal hardships. Okay, because in the family you should have the rule of love, not the rule of law.
True.
Okay, and this is the archetype of Lord Ram. Has there been other archetypes like this in our history or among our gods? Yes, and I mentioned that in the article. Look at the example of Gautam Buddha. He was actually, in a sense, an ideal follower of laws. He set up a way of life, a code of living which helps millions of people, hundreds of millions of people, even today. And they find purpose because of him. But what was his personal life like? Gautam Buddha's personal life, we all know, correct? Then look at Mahatma Gandhi, for example. He taught many Indians, a way of life which helped us, which helped solve many social issues as well. It wasn't just about getting rid of the British. And so many Indians worship him as the father of the nation. And he was a great man. There's no denying that. And there are things to be learned from him. But again, what is his family life like? Again, we all know. And that is the point of the archetype of Maryada Purushottam. that this is very good normally for a society. It has challenges within the family life. That's what we learn from this archetype. That's a way to approach it. That's what we learn from Lord Ram.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And therefore, my submission at the end of the day is, if you're the family members of such people, maybe you have cause to complain. But if you're their people,
Yes.
like we are the people of Lord Ram, we're the people of Gautam Buddha, we're the people of Mahatma Gandhi, because they sacrificed their own lives, their own families for us.
Indeed.
What right do we have to complain? I mean, we benefited from them. But yes, if you're a family member of a Maryada Purushottam, of an ideal follower of laws, life is challenging. Yes.
Shefali?
Yeah. Amish, again, I'm coming back to your journey as a writer. You said in an earlier interview is that India needs liberal messages. Now, I'm curious because when you were a banker, your dharma would have been probably different. So how did you come to this realize is your swadharma? Because it's a very fascinating idea, actually.
Frankly, so many of us just go through life without even thinking or realizing what our swadharma should be, what our purpose in life should be.
Yes.
When I was working as a banker, my attitude was very clear that, look, it's a job. The idea is to earn money to pay my bills. I come from a humble middle class family. My banking job dramatically transformed my life. The kind of lifestyle I could lead, the responsibilities I could meet. So I had no complaints against that. But I could say that it was my swadharma. That I wouldn't get up every morning and say, "Yeah, I'm a banker and I'm changing the world." Types. No, but writing the book really changed me as a person dramatically. Writing my first book, Immortals of Melua. And even today, I still write from that perspective, that when I'm writing, I write something which feels right to me. Agli kitab na chale to koi nahi, I'll go back to my banking job. But the pleasure of writing, and mining stories and philosophies that I feel so passionately about, that I think has, in my own small way, I'm contributing to a land that I love. Is something which can really, it gives me such a sense of purpose, so much happiness, that no amount of money, nothing can match this. And which is what I always suggest to people, that, try and find what your purpose is, and only you can find it. No one else can find it for you. If you can find purpose, then living it is, it's one of the greatest privileges of life.
Very, very true. Very true.
Absolutely. As you rightly said that, a lot of people, maybe they don't find their purpose, and other people have a different purpose projected onto them, and they are, raised with different mindset.
People force, your society will force purpose on you. Who's anyone else to force? Only you can discover your own purpose.
So that actually brings me to a different discussion. We are seeing the rise of extremism, not just religious, but otherwise also. So I wanted to check with you as to what do you think, or who do you think can convince the religious extremists? Is it the religious liberals, or is it the secular elite who can convince the religious extremists about, the path not being really meaningful for them or the society at large?
Look, the secular elite and the religious extremists really Ram Banai Jodi, because they're made for each other. They shout and scream at each other, and sadly they dominate the public debate. But they're both extremists in their own right, and I don't think they will solve any problems. There is a problem of religious extremism in many parts of the world, but I'm not saying everything about India is perfect. There are many things that we need to improve, but I don't think this is a serious problem in India. And I mean it across all religious groups. Most of us common Indians across all religious groups are actually, on average, very chilled out. We may be deeply religious, but we kind of intuitively get the right of respecting someone else's right and point of view to follow their own approach. This is one of the things that we Indians can actually teach many things to the world. I'm not saying everything about India is perfect, but in this area, we're among the best in the world, actually.
Wow. Thank you. Sai?
So that again brings me to the the double hostility that the religious liberals face. One is from the religious extremists who, who don't have any limits upon them, and one from the secular elite. And I love the term you used. What was that? Ivory tower secular communists. So they are there, like, coming up every month for every festival, kind of making fun of the religious practices, as well as, making life difficult for
look, these things upset me. In fact, I was so upset by this that in my latest book, in Sita, Warrior of Mithila, there's actually a Jallikattu scene. Okay.
Yes.
I saw Lord Lakshman playing Jallikattu. अब बोलो, बस हम लोग करेंगे बॉस, ये हमारी प्रथा है, हम लोग करेंगे, आपको जो उखाड़ना है उखाड़ लो. Okay, I'm not saying that that we should that if there are corruptions that have crept in, that if there are things where the animal is being severely hurt in any way, those excesses must be controlled, and that is something that the community must take charge of. But our festivals that have been coming for a long time, this is a deep part of our culture. Dahi Handi right here in Mumbai, or Durga Puja in the east, or Kambala in Karnataka. These festivals are a part of of our way of life. We are not just a congregational religion. For us, these festivals are a very important experience of the divine, and we cannot just give them up. We cannot. Sorry, we're not going to give them up.
Yes, but do you think the narrative?
Wherever there are excesses, yes, we must regulate that. But there's no question of banning or stopping these things. That's not going to happen.
But do you think the narrative would be democratized enough so that we get to live that?
Because Jallikattu to ho raha hai na. I'm saying the thing is that, look, it's like this, yeah. I always, this is one of the things my boss had told me once in my banking days. Ki, bhai, even a child, if he wants food from have things that are important for you. Violence, but then we have to. And I believe that we shouldn't get unfair. We must look at ourselves also, and we must improve. The question of stopping these is a very part of our relationship with the divine.
Thank you.
I have a question, Amish ji. Am I audible?
For example. Sorry, even if like one of the things I don't like, there are excesses. There are boys very badly. So it reflects badly on our way of life. It reflects badly, and that needs to be ridiculous. Correct. We must behave. We must behave in line with the ancestors.
Amish ji, since all religions are not the same, do you think there is a need for interfaith dialogue? And to create some understanding, and what exactly should be done to make these interfaith dialogues successful?
One problem with interfaith dialogue has become is there's this desperate that no, we are all the same. Like to explain this through the example of our body. They're all that's correct. We live when we die, when we'll be cremated or up to that resource. Correct. So the source and the destination are both the same. But can you say all our bodies the source destination is the same? All our bodies are the same source as well. was the same. Will also be God, but ultimately, what we are experiencing now is a different experience. So our own individual journeys, which means we'll all find different practices. The decency to respect someone else's journey as well. I'm at a different part, different religion will work for me.
Do you think that ancient India's cultural soul is intact, and can foreign influences be accommodated without actually altering ancient India's soul?
We were almost like the America of the ancient world, okay? Because we used to accept knowledge and from everywhere. We used to keep the core of it. An education system has been lost a bit. In fact, educated the more realities, and that's something that few people like us, have parents, grandparents who've taken effort, so therefore we've learned. But education system doesn't teach us anything. Even something as basic as the seasons in India. When I was young, I was taught that India has 4 seasons: autumn, winter, spring, summer. My son, who's 8 years old, is taught the same thing once again. And I remember I'd asked a question, whatever, 35, 36 years ago, कि मैम monsoon कहाँ गया? And the reality for seasons, even is not connected by reality. Forget about only you or Bodhai energy. Medicine, they'll not teach Shruta Charakji. We teach nothing of our own, of our own rules. We have education realized.
That was my question. I'll just butt in. That's really my point. That today's kids, especially in urban India, are being completely deracinated because the education system, as you very rightly said, has no space for Indian classics. So our kids know about Homer and Odyssey, but they don't know about Mahabharata, they don't know about Kalidasa, they don't know about Meghdut. And when there are efforts made to correct this in the curriculum, it is being called saffronization, and everybody is saying, oh, you shouldn't do it. So how do you think we can go about this, and how do we teach our children to be more connected with the roots?
Well, firstly, we have to keep raising our voice. So even among our great thinkers, Adi Shankaracharya ji, why is he not taught? The impact that he had, across India, he's not taught at all. Thiruvalluvar, he's not taught. Lal Der, the famous Kashmiri Sufi poet, she's not taught. We don't learn enough of our own culture, and my point is that unless we raise the issue, how will it get sorted? And I'm not suggesting that it's only about great Hindu so-called thinkers. And Mirza Ghalib should be taught, Amir Khusro should be taught, but teach Indian stuff. Like I said, a simple thing like we should teach how many seasons are actually there in India, not in Europe. There's what benefit can there be of disconnecting our children from India completely? How will that help? Why are our cities so unable to handle the monsoons? Why are so many of our buildings unable to handle the monsoons? Because actually it's not considered as the center of everything in the modern Indian education system. But in the ancient Indian way, the monsoon was the center of everything. In fact, the word for year, varsh, was drawn from the word for monsoon, varsha, for rain, varsha. How to manage that was a central part of Indian administrators, Indian architects, etc. Because it is the central part of the Indian way of life, our monsoons. When you disconnect, people from our roots, you're not going to get stuff which is suitable for India. Think about the buildings that are built. I used to work in a bank. So obviously, like most banking office buildings, it was a glass-walled building. A glass-walled building makes sense in Western Europe because वहाँ पे sun नहीं होता है, correct? So there is no sun. You're trying to get some sun in so that you don't wasting too much money heating bills, etc. Boss, this India, there is sun all the time out here, boss. And the sun is strong. So if you build a glass wall building in India, what you're building essentially is a giant microwave oven, correct? And I had a cabin, in my last job as a member of the senior management committee. So I was at the glass wall. The sun would be baking me from this side, and the AC would be blasting me from this side. How does anyone work in that atmosphere? But our entire approach of the education system is to create generations of people who feel completely disconnected from India. So we have nonsensical buildings like this. The education actually has a real impact. We need to raise it. Has a real impact.
Yeah, true. Like I'm from Kerala and I have no winter or autumn, but I have been learning 4 seasons and I am experiencing it only after coming here in Europe. So my question for you with respect to that is that with your works, Immortals of Meluha and the Shiva trilogy and the Science of Ikshvaku and all, you actually bought our young Indians, young generation, successfully. Actually, you were quite successful in drawing our young generation to create interest in them to look into the past, into the stories. So, do you really expect that the Immortal India, your collection of essays, will help them to, in this 70 after this is we are having now celebrating the 70th year of our independence. So the past 70 years we have been to look into the, look behind and think what sort of impact, do you really expect that what sort of a similar, like your fictional work, if you do your, does your non-fiction work also help in creating a impact on the youngsters and the Indians to look behind and
understand things,
invoke the spirit of our culture, especially since we are in a political and cultural reinventing phase?
Sure. No, good question, and I think I'm trying to do that with my book. Whether I'll be successful or not, I don't know. I hope I am. But what I'm trying to do with this non-fiction book also is bring out issues that are at the heart of my fiction books. Through my fiction books, actually, I try to convey many points of view and philosophies. So the fiction book is like a wrapper around the philosophies. It's step 2, and the philosophies are step 1. What I'm doing with my non-fiction book, Immortal India, is to communicate the step 1 itself, the philosophies, in a direct manner, because there are many who want to discuss this as well. And I hope I'm able to trigger debates where necessary. And I always believe boon boon se sagar banta hai, that all of us have a duty to contribute in our small way, to India, and everyone's small contributions will hopefully add up to to something quantifiable. And
Amishi, does Immortal India talk about what you feel that culture is and what the youth can do to preserve the culture of India? Does the book talk about it?
Yes, it does actually, and I speak of what what is, like, one of the things that I speak of is what is it in our Indian culture, that in our ancient stories, essentially what is culture? It's a shared collective set of stories, thoughts, philosophies that all of us 1.25 billion people believe in. That's what culture is. What is it in our culture that we are one of the few ancient cultures that has survived till today? Most other ancient cultures have been wiped out. They are museum pieces now, correct? The modern Egyptians don't really believe in the stories of Amun-Ra anymore. Modern Greeks don't believe in the stories of the Olympian gods anymore. But in India, even today, as we did, perhaps 8, 9, 10,000 years ago, we still worship a Shivling. We still have the Yajna platforms the way it was. Our stories may adapt and change, but the soul is still very much there. So there's something in our culture that we stubbornly refuse to die. Despite so many violent attacks, so many intellectual attacks, we stubbornly refuse to die, and yet we've not lost our essence. A lot of cultures which get attacked a lot, you get so defensive because you've suffered so much, that you get very that you lose your essence as well. But we've not lost our essence too, and it truly is magical. It's one of the things I discuss in our book, that what is it in us that we've refused to die, but we've still kept our essence, our core liberalism alive. It's a very rare combination. There are very, very few ancient cultures, major ancient cultures that have managed to do this.
In
Some
fact,
poet I think has said it. कुछ तो बात है कि हस्ती
Yeah.
मिटती
Yeah, Iqbal had said it. Yeah. So, I mean, Iqbal certainly had character flaws. I'll not deny that, but he was a very good poet. There's no denying that. He was a brilliant poet. यूनानो मिस्र रोमा सब मिट गए जहां से, अब तक मगर है बाकी नामो निशा हमारा, कुछ बात है कि हस्ती मिटती नहीं हमारी, सदियों रहा है दुश्मन दौरे जमा हमारा. So wonderful lines, wonderful lines.
I mean, we would like to remember him for Tarana-e Hind and not Tarana-e Milli, that's for sure. So,
Hi Amish, am I audible?
just
Hi.
Yeah.
could we
Hi, Devansh.
just
Sorry, Dimple.
is he? Just give me a moment.
What are you speaking?
Hey Devansh, could we please do this towards the end? I think you joined a little late. We'd like to
Yeah.
and then probably you could.
I
Not
No
a
problem.
problem. Not a problem. Amish ji, just wanted on the theme of, we are one of the ancient civilizations. What does it mean to be the only extant religion which worships the feminine power? I mean, we are one of the continuous. So, what
It's extremely important, and I forget who, but there was some bizarre tweet I saw from some Western media company claiming that a picture of one rare Devi temple in India. I was like, dude, which part of India have you not seen a Devi temple in here? So it is a part of the Indian way. And we have always respected the feminine principle. But like I always say, for me, true patriotism also means that, of course, we should celebrate things that need celebrating, but it also means that we should question things that need questioning. And like our parents question us, right, at times, but that's because they love us, no, and they want us to improve. And it's the same thing we should want from our countrymen as well. That yes, we continue to worship Devi Ma as we should, but there are many in many ways the way women are treated today in India. We are insulting our ancestors, and we are going against our ancient culture. And I always say that those who fight for women's rights are actually not being Western. In fact, they're being truly Indian. And we need to fight this good fight. It's for the good of India.
How do you answer to people who keep saying that our gods are just myths and there's no element of truth in all that we believe in? How do you actually respond to those people?
Even theoretical physics is coming around to that point of view that all truth is subjective. It's from the perspective of the observer. So what is truth? One can have a big debate on. I always say that, look, it is my truth. I believe in our gods. It gives me peace to believe in it, to believe in our divine. You don't want to believe in it, don't believe in it. It's your choice. I'm not forcing my point of view on you. And like there's the wonderful, very famous line from the Rig Veda, from the Asya Vamasya hymn, that Ekam Sat Vipra Bhagavata Vadanti, truth is one, but the wise men speak it as many. And you believe the truth that gives you peace. If you don't want to believe in our gods, don't believe. It's your choice. I believe. It gives me peace.
You said that you tell the feminists that the true way to be a feminist is actually go back to our ways. But that is true for a lot of things also. That is true for being green as well. I mean, when people ask me, how do you celebrate a green Diwali? I keep telling them, do it the way our ancestors did. They used diyas, they used only eco-friendly stuff. Basically, the way we have had, it's always been green, it's always been in conjunction with nature. But now this whole thing is like, Diwali ban karo, Holi ban karo, sab Hindu festivals ban karo.
No, and I think we discussed this earlier when we were discussing, Jallikattu and Dahi Handi and those festivals as well. And I feel the same for Diwali and Holi. All of us have a right to celebrate festivals the way we choose to. But I say that the concept in the Indian way is to see the divine in everything, which means we see the divine in nature as well. So if we are celebrating things in a way that is harmful to nature, then we should try and learn and try and not do it. But I see no reason why Diwali should be banned or Holi should be banned. This is, like I said, this is silly. And our festivals are a very important part of our connection to the divine. We cannot give them up. So, but I'll say, and with nature, and our festivals help us get into tune with the rhythms of nature. Like, for example, why is it that in the Shravan month across India, for some or the other reason, we are all told to be vegetarian. Some or the other reason, there'll always be some story associated with it. What is the scientific reason behind it? It's something that my father had told me once. He said, remember, India's rhythms are driven by the monsoons. Okay, Shravan month is the main monsoon month, correct? The Western Gregorian calendar can move a bit, but the Indian calendar is very scientific. Shravan is when monsoon happens. So this is the main mating season for animals. Okay, so if you kill animals in this season, okay, you're not just wiping out an individual animal, you might wipe out an entire generation. Correct? Because you don't want to kill them during their mating season. It goes against the rhythm of nature. So therefore, there is some story given to us, some or the other reason, but be vegetarian. In this month, there's our ancestors always, there was some logic, to the stories that were given to us, so that we can get ourselves into the rhythms and of nature. Correct? We should, but as modern Indians, we should try and learn those things, that we shouldn't do things which we know are harmful. Like if you're playing Holi with chemical colors, correct? Or you're throwing things on people from top of your building, okay? Or you're harassing girls. No, this is not on, boss. This is, I won't go on the extreme of those who say ban these festivals, but I'll also say that these kind of things are not the right thing to do, and they don't do us any, do our culture any good. That Holi is not an excuse to harass girls. It's not.
So maintaining civility.
Sorry?
Maintaining civility while...
It is. That's what Holi is supposed to be. Yeah.
Amishi, we believe in, Adi Shakti mein Prakriti aur Purush dono ka hai bhag, matlab, you have a masculine and feminine energy. Shiv ko bhi Ardhanarishwar bola gaya hai. So it's like we don't look at masculine and feminine energy as male and female per se.
No,
that's not how we do. So what is exactly the gist of it all, and can a better understanding of our mythology and beliefs actually lead to more acceptance of various gender orientations? I mean, do you cover this?
Yeah, there are two different approaches. There are two different aspects to this. One is, of course, the concept of duality in the Indian way. There's a unity which breaks into duality, and both those forces balance each other. It can be called masculine, feminine, Purush, Prakriti, various terms. In terms of gender orientations, in fact, it's one of the articles that I speak of. Then ancient India actually had a very liberal attitude to it. It had a live and let live approach. There was, for example, Bhangaswan, who's been mentioned in the Mahabharata, was a man who later chose to become a woman. Ila, who was the daughter of Vevaswata Manu and the founder of the Chandravanshi clan. And in fact, a very important part of India, and some say maybe all of India, was named after her, Ilavarta. She later chose to become a man called Ila. And they were, like I said, the country was named after her. And there was space and freedom and respect for people to have a different point of view. That I will not judge you, you will not judge me. In Vedic Sanskrit, once again, do you know there's no translation for the English word judgment? Nyaya is not judgment. Nyaya is justice. If you think about it, you'll not find a word for judgment. That concept that you are wrong, you will go to hell. That concept did not exist, because everyone has a right to their truth. I will debate with you, but I have no right to judge you. Even God doesn't judge you.
A different question. See, if a person converts from, say, Hinduism to another religion for economic benefits, he can actually start pursuing religion very differently, and the idea would be to just extract maximum material benefit out of it, and the spiritual upliftment part just goes away. So, I mean, what do you have to say about it? And if a person is just doing conversion because of economic reasons, we have proselytization happening across. So, how can it help in spiritual upliftment, if at all? Do you think it can?
Actually, in Immortal India, I have actually written an article on religious conversions.
Wow.
On this issue, and I have approached it from two perspectives. One is from the material perspective, and the other is from the spiritual perspective. I believe in freedom of religion, so you should have the right to choose whatever you want. But I don't believe in conversion marketing. Because spiritually it almost is never good, correct? Because conversion marketing, whatever be the faith, comes from an approach of this guy's religion is wrong, this guy's God is wrong, and this religion is true, this God is true. Moment you take that approach, your own spiritual growth actually stops. Your own personal happiness, and you will realize it sometime or the other, will actually get impacted. Because you enter into the realm of judgment then. From a spiritual perspective, it's almost never good. From a material, Mayavi world perspective, one can debate whether it's good or not, because like in any field, some amount of competition always pushes people to reform. Like for example, and in this article I mentioned like the three main major issues impacting, say, the three main religions, say Hinduism, Christianity, and Islam. So in Hinduism I speak of the caste system, which in the last few centuries has been negative. In Christianity I speak of the abuse of little boys by many priests, which happened in thousands, tens of thousands, probably hundreds of thousands of numbers across the world. And in Islam, I speak of religious violence, that is hurting the Muslim world the most. And I say that you'll find in the Western world where this child sexual abuse issue really blew up, in the last few decades. You'll find church attendance has collapsed. You'll find faith in Christianity has collapsed. Atheism has shot up. And perhaps as a result of that, though the church was in denial for long, is actually now at least trying to confront these issues, at least trying to accept that there is a problem, that something needs to be done. In much of the Middle East, religious competition is not allowed, because you can get there are serious legal restraints on conversions. But if that happened, then maybe even this issue of violence could be addressed, because there's a lot of intra-religion violence in the Middle East. So the Shias are oppressed in Saudi Arabia, in Bahrain, whereas the Sunnis are oppressed in Iran, in much of Iraq. So if there's, you never know, if you feel, if religious groups start feeling I may lose, my own followers because of religious competition, I'll try and reform and stop this. And we can't deny, even within Hinduism, there are many of us who genuinely believe that the caste system is a corruption of our ancient culture, and it needs to be combated aggressively. But one can't deny that in the minds of some Hindus, they also think that we have to fight this, otherwise, we will lose adherence. So there is that issue as well from a material perspective. It does have an impact. One can't deny that. You can debate whether it's positive or negative, that competition. But spiritually, conversion marketing, religious marketing is almost always negative, and it's worst on the person actually doing the conversion marketing, because his or her own spiritual growth collapses. Because the fundamental, like I mentioned in the article, fundamental of conversion marketing is this: that my religion is true, your religion is wrong. My God is true, your God is wrong. Moment to get into that approach, spiritual growth stops.
Indeed. You spoke about various sects of Islam. Actually, India is the only country in the neighborhood wherein all sects of Islam are guaranteed religious freedom. So, I mean, what then do you have to say to all those who are so busy trying to brand immortal India as intolerant India?
No, you're right. I mean, Shias and Muslims live in peace, in India. And in fact, there's an article on this issue also in my book, that I always say that, look, if you're judging a country of the scale of 1.25 billion people, you have to look at data, not at a few anecdotes, because our scale is so big. We are more a continent than a country, correct? And if you look at data, religious violence is actually minuscule, in India. There are other forms of violence. So I'm not saying everything in India is perfect. There are many things we need to improve. But religious violence is actually minuscule in India. Data is very clear on that.
Indeed. Sai?
And I had a question regarding the Aryan invasion theory, which is being again reconcocted now, as I see. But when did you first discover, and how did you first discover that it was a concocted theory, and how did that change your reading or outlook towards, given your love for history?
I'd studied in Tamil Nadu in my younger years. So I learned a bit of Tamil in those days also. I still remember the numbers in Tamil. Unna renda moona nala anje aara ere atta umpata.
I'll have to call my husband because I don't know.
But I've forgotten much others. When I'd said, because at that time I'd already learned the Aryan invasion theory, and one of the things that intrigued me, Sangam literature does not mention Dravida anywhere. Correct? It doesn't. Correct? If it was an ancient thing, it should have been mentioned, no, somewhere. The Rig Veda mentions the word Arya precisely 2 times. That's it. Correct? The texts don't seem to back the thing, and there is no archaeological evidence for any massive invasion. If an entire
some 37 skeletons which
years ago, there should have been massive, wars, battlefield archaeology. Something should have, some cities burned to the ground. Something should have been discovered. No, nothing like that has been discovered. Genetic research, even that recent Hindu article, the scientific paper that was quoted, the writer of that scientific paper actually debunked the Hindu article. So, but the way I see it is, look, and there are some who are public intellectuals who read stuff. My father's a genetic scientist, so whatever I read, I cross-check with him. But the way I see it, what would be ideal is, rather than public intellectuals, the scholars in this area, from both the left wing and the right wing, should actually have a public debate. This public debate of scholars from both sides has actually never happened in India, which is unfortunate. I would suggest that maybe you guys should organize it, and scholars from both sides in a public, free and fair means. The scholars, not public intellectuals, the actual scholars, guys doing the actual research. Let them debate. Yeah, let them debate, and let's hear this. One thing that's very clear is that most of what we've been taught till now, there are serious issues with it. Okay, so let's debate it. I don't believe in the Aryan invasion theory. To me, it doesn't make too much sense.
Neither do we, I'm sure. Amish, when we talk about the ancient history and the painful past, people accuse us of trying to sow hatred and being divisive, and it actually discourages a lot of people from healing themselves. The wounds still stay and fester. So don't you believe that an acceptance and reconciliation could actually pave the way forward for peace. Don't you think an acceptance, a reconciliation is necessary?
In fact, this is a subject I discuss also in Immortal India of painful parts in our history. And I use the example of a child suffering abuse. When they grow up, you normally find two psychological strategies. Either there's unfocused anger on everyone, or there's denial कि मेरे साथ तो कुछ हुआ ही नहीं. Correct? And many countries do this as well. Okay, so if you go to the Arab world, to be fair, the Arab world has suffered a lot in the last 800 years, 800, 900 years. Because first the Turks came. The same Turks who came and destroyed India also went and destroyed the Arab world, by the way. So first the Turks came, destroyed, massacred, and then ruled them. Then the colonialists came, correct? And then destroyed, massacred, and ruled them. And now they are technically independent, but not really, correct? So they've had 800 years of really painful history, and they've suffered. And I've traveled a bit in the Arab world, and you can make out that they haven't come to terms with their history. There's just a lot of unfocused anger. There's anger towards everyone, and you see that in the way their countries are, they're in a mess because of unfocused anger. So unfocused anger or hatred is not a good strategy. But the Indian strategy has been denial. कि यार हमारे साथ तो कुछ हुआ ही नहीं. That is also not a good strategy, as any psychologist will tell you, because denial just forces things, underground, and it comes out in unhealthy ways. So how do we handle the difficult parts of our history? The way I suggest is we must see the truth, we must explore the truth, but we must give up two very important things. There is no concept of community guilt, okay? And there is no concept of historical guilt. Both those things are nonsense. Like, for example, I'm an Indian. I traveled to Sri Lanka many years ago. And Sri Lanka had faced, they call Hindus Indians, So I had gone to this place, and yes, there were Indians who had attacked out there. There was violence. Yes, it's a painful part of history. And I was told by the local guide out there that you Indians should apologize for what you did. I said, why should I apologize? I haven't done anything. Yeah? Someone came, 800 years ago. It's not my fault. Correct? So we should understand this concept that blaming someone today for what someone did 800 years ago is silly. Correct? There is no concept of community guilt or historical guilt. That's nonsense. But we must accept the truth of what happened. So the Turkic invasion, what is called the Delhi Sultanate, should actually be called the Turkic colonial rule, correct? Like if we don't call the British colonial rule the Christian rule, why do we call the Turkic colonial rule Islamic invasion? Because Indian Muslims weren't a part of the ruling elite either at that time.
Indeed.
If you read the list of nobles, you read Tariq-e-Firoz Shahi, most of the 95% of the nobles would be either Turks or Persians or Arabs or Afghans.
The
Correct?
Indian Muslims were looked down upon, actually.
Indian Muslims and Indian Hindus were not a part of the ruling elite at all. Absolutely. Correct?
Right.
So it has nothing to do with Indian Muslims. But the Turkic colonial rule was among the most brutal invasions in the history of humanity. That is a fact.
Absolutely.
So we must see the truth of it, but realize that it has nothing to do with anyone today. Correct? That is ridiculous. And then accept it and then move on. Indeed. Correct? Aage badho. See the truth for what it is and then aage badho. Denial or unfocused anger, both these strategies aren't good. Turkic colonial rule, Aurangzeb, the British Raj period were periods of immense disaster, death and destruction for India. We should see and acknowledge and research those parts of history so that we can draw lessons. What mistakes did we make? Why did we lose? Correct? So that we don't repeat those mistakes again. Do you know at the peak of the British Raj, there were more than 1 lakh Britishers in India? That's it, just 1 lakh. If you think about it, 1 lakh Britishers ruled 350 million Indians for what, nearly 200 years? This is sometime in the future, people will be researching and saying, ye sala hua kaise? Because this is not just a conquest. This is humiliation that is unparalleled in human history. Correct? What mistakes did we make? How did we allow this to happen? In Jallianwala Bagh, the guy who ordered the killing was General Dyer, a British officer. But every person who actually shot the bullets was our own, was an Indian. Correct? So we need to learn from our own history so that we don't repeat the mistakes. That's why you should know the truth. So we should see the truth for what it is, learn from it, realize that it has nothing to do with anyone today, and move on.
So moving on, आगे बढ़ते हुए from the past to the present, I happened to chance through the contents of your book. I just wanted to ask you if there's something about centralization and regionalization. So basically, what I wanted to ask is that centralization leads to neglect of regional problems, and regionalization could actually have a weak center. So how do we manage the distribution of power, considering that we are such a diverse country?
We have to find an ideal balance on this. Okay, but having said that, considering the diversity of India, India is more a decentralized society than a heavily centralized one. And I think from top, even the messages that are coming even in the modern day is that we have to ask what can we do for ourselves and for our country rather than waiting for the government to do something for us. And that has always been the Indian approach. And I think we should need to revive that approach, that we need to take charge and solve our own problems.
A sense of duty rather than...
Exactly. Sense of duty rather than right. That has always been the Indian approach. And the Indian approach has always been, mera problem hai, main sort out karunga. Correct? It's not that how will some bureaucrat sitting in Delhi know at all what my problem as a Mumbaikar is? Usko kya malum hoga? Correct? I have to sort it out for myself. We should sort it out for ourselves. Things should be delegated.
Shefali?
Yeah, Amish, my question is, on one hand, as you said, we need to come to face with the truth. So your books are very, very popular with the young people today. Even my kids actually think very highly of you. So my question is, on one hand, we have this very deracinated generation who doesn't have any grounding on our classics. But at the same time, they are exploring books like Sai's, books like Kavita, to try and understand what happened and understand the different perspective. So what do you make of this process?
I think we should have more faith in our youngsters and our youth. Despite such a colonial education system which is completely cut off, our culture has not died out. No, there's something in us that, like I said, we refuse to die. So we should have more faith in our youngsters. There's nothing wrong in picking up good things from the West. I'm not anti-West. It is a successful civilization. They've got some things. They've got many things right. And the ancient Indian approach was that if someone is doing something well, then learn. What's the harm in learning? There's no dishonor in learning. But we should keep the core of our own culture. And I think we should have faith in our youngsters. They will do it.
Amishi, it's already 8:08. Do we have time for quick 2 or 3 questions from the audience?
Sure.
All right. So Devansh wants some advice from your end to a budding writer who wants to explore the genre of ancient Vedic mythology. Any advice?
Before you get to writing, my advice is, I always advise whoever wants to write, especially on our mythology and our fantasy, be a good reader first. And my suggestion is rough ratio of reading to writing should be 100:1, which is for every single page that you write, you should read at least 100 pages. That's the only way your book will be rich. And only when your book is rich, when detail jumps out of every page, will someone truly enjoy it. But when you are writing, try and make sure that that book does not become like a research tome. So you should do a lot of research, but let it come lightly in your book. Don't try and show off your research out there.
One more question is from Mr. Sridharan. He wants me to ask you this. He says he finds Christianity in India adapting all symbols and practices of Hinduism, and he wants to ask you if that is to be welcomed as a concession or is that to be opposed as usurpation?
The approach that most Indians have had, is not just of of tolerance, but of active respect, for each other. So there's a Mount Mary Church in Mumbai where you'll find so many Hindus and Muslims going and praying out there. Diwali is technically a Hindu festival, but it's celebrated by by Muslims and Christians too across India. So I think there is nothing wrong with actively respecting and adopting things of each other. Having said that, the respect must be mutual. That is the only point. Respect cannot be one way. Respect must be mutual. But there's nothing wrong with respect for each other's way of life. I mean, I visit the Mount Mary Church because I find it beautiful. So I see nothing wrong with that. In the Indian way, we see divine everywhere.
Sumati wants to know your views on the use and perception of saffron in the popular narrative, social media, and mainstream media.
Interestingly, if you go back into our ancient past, it can be debated whether saffron was actually our holy color. It can be debated because some say maybe our holy color was blue, linked to the sky. Some say maybe our holy color was white. It's just that it's become the impression now. A lot of it is also the impact of Buddhism, but I say all colors are beautiful, and I'm proud of saffron too.
The last question before we sign off is from Lakshmi. She says, when you say that we never changed in spite of colonized education, it's actually because the education never reached everyone then. So now, especially with access to education currently far and wide, we have to Indianize education. How can this be addressed quickly?
I agree with you that education needs to be Indianized quickly, and then all of us then have to raise our voice about it. We have to keep speaking of it because only then will the politicians listen. One of the benefits of being a democracy is that politicians have to listen to us. And I have a lot of respect for our political class. I know it's fashionable to criticize our politicians, but running a country like India is not easy. And the politicians know what will get them votes. So if we make it an issue, then it'll happen. We must want our system to be Indianized, our education system. I will answer that linguistic. I'm just saying there's some linguistic dispute issue as well from Devans Trivedi.
That was me as well. Yeah.
Okay, so my approach to the linguistic issue is the following. That and I'll quote something that I heard from this Assamese singer called Papon, who I'm a big fan of. He's brilliant, and I'd heard him in Guwahati, and he'd said that for any person, the language is like his or her mother, and obviously you'll respect your mother. That is obvious to be expected, but at the same time you have to respect the mothers of others as well. And to me, that is the way I see it. That we must. There is a language that all of us need to learn to get good jobs. I call it the Pet Ki Bhasha, the language of the stomach, which is English. Correct? We all need to learn. And I wouldn't recommend any one of us send our think that we shouldn't teach our children English, because then we'll be doing them a disservice. Correct? They need to learn that to get a good job, but they must learn their matrubhasha as well, their mother tongue. And at home, at everywhere, we must celebrate our mother tongues as well, which for me could be Hindi, for someone else could be Kannada, for someone else could be Tamil, for someone else could be Marathi, for Assamese, Bengali, whatever. We have so many wonderful languages, and we must celebrate all these languages, because there's a treasure house of literature and knowledge and philosophy in all these languages. And we cannot allow that to die out, because then we lose a part of India if that happens. And the way I see it, whichever state you live in, make an attempt to learn the native language of that state. There's no dishonor in that. I live in Maharashtra, wherever my family may have been from. So I've tried to learn a little bit of Marathi. I can understand Marathi, and when I'm speaking to a native Marathi person, the fact that I at least try, brings a smile on their face. I agree. I may mess up the grammar and everything, but the fact that I at least try opens their heart to me. What's the harm in that? Correct. So I think the only native speakers who make fun of you if you don't speak their language well are the native English speakers in India. Because if like my parents, they studied in a Hindi medium school, correct? So They found it very difficult to get good jobs. They had a tough life, because of that. And Ma used to say that, it won't even be appreciated that at least she's trying, to speak in a language that is not her language. But every other language speaker in India, if you are not a native speaker of that language and you at least make an attempt, they appreciate their attempt and they'll open their heart for you.
Absolutely.
So I say that to all people. If you're living in Maharashtra, no matter where you're from, try to karo Marathi mein baat karne ki. If you're living in Karnataka, try to karo Kannada mein baat karne ki. Even if it's broken, a native Kannada speaker will appreciate the effort that you're making. Then he'll open his heart to you. If you're in Tamil Nadu, try to karo Tamil mein baat karne ki. If you're in West Bengal, and that's what will bind the country together. What binds the country together is our ideas, not the different languages.
Indeed. I think we are running very short of time. We don't want to end the chat abruptly. So if there are any other questions, I'd request you to just send those to me. You could or address your questions to our Indic Academy handle, and we'll make sure that Amish ji answers all of those for you. Thank you, Amish ji. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Thanks a lot, you wonderful audience. You've been very patient with us all along. Before we sign off, I would like to remind you all that Immortal India is going to be out soon. Pre-release, it's available. Go make sure that you read the book because it covers a lot of topics that we discussed today. Yes, Amishi, that was right. So with this, we come to the end of a very enriching Indic Chat. Thank you so much. I would like to really thank our media partners, Creative India Magazine and Swarajya Magazine, for their support. I would request all of you who've tuned in today to make sure that you're there next Sunday at 7 p.m. for another episode of Indic Chat. Do remember to follow Indic Academy, Indic Book Club on Facebook and Twitter. Happy Independence Day, everybody. Swatantrata Divas ki dhero shubhkamnaएं. Namaste.
Bye. Bye. Take care.